Welcome to the Masters in Travel podcast and to our client experience series. So, this month we've been diving into every aspect of client experience and why we think it's such an important element of your business that should not be overlooked. Today is our third client experience episode. So, if you haven't yet tuned into episodes 174 and 175, please go back and listen to those conversations first. They really do set the foundation. In episode 174, we laid the foundation for what we'll be discussing today. That episode talked about how we want clients to feel when they're working with us and what our purpose is, aside from obviously the money and business stuff, because let's be honest, we all want to earn money doing something we love. But aside from this, what is our deeper purpose of why we started our travel business and how does that relate to our brand experience and therefore our client experience? In episode 175, we talked through 5 specific areas of client experience that we should be considering when auditing our client experience and looking for opportunities to tweak and refine. This is really important because it just gives us that bird's eye view of all the different areas that impact our client experience. So, today, we're going to dive into today's conversation, and we'd like to take first a moment to invite all of you guys to join us for Crafting Your Signature Client Experience, which is a masterclass for travel advisors. It's happening on June 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or you can join us June 19th at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard or 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. If you need to learn more or register, head to our mastersintravelpod.com/client experience to sign up for that masterclass. It's going to be the same on both days, so just choose a day that works best for you. Again, that's going to be taking place June 18th to the 19th, and you can sign up at mastersintravelpod.com/client experience. Okay, today we're going to dive deep into more detail about how we can audit our communication and systems in each phase of the trip design process and how this impacts our client experience. Are you ready?
Whew. So last time in our episode last week, we spent quite a bit of time on communication and systems. And so today we're going to dive even deeper into that and specifically tying it to auditing our communication and our systems throughout the trip design process. So if we break down the trip design process into 4 key kind of parts, I think about this as the discovery phase, the design phase, the delivery phase, and then the delight phase. And I cannot take credit for that quippy little discovery, design, delivery, delight. That's all Brianna.
Listen, anything that kind of like makes you remember things or kind of just gives it a little bit of oomph is always
I
a
was
good
like,
thing.
oh, that's cute. Look at that. So as we audit and kind of walk through each of these phases of the trip design process, we're going to talk about communication and how and what that should look like and how we audit it, and then how that connects to systems. So let's start with discovery phase. When you think of the discovery phase, what type of communication? And in our last episode, we talked about not only what are we communicating, but how are we communicating it? What immediately comes to mind when you think about communication in the discovery phase of the process?
Right. So I think this a lot of times has to do with the initial kind of like where people are deciding on, hey, do we want to get the process started? So when they are filling out our form, that's the first opportunity, or when they're on our website, the first opportunity to communicate with them and give them an idea of, hey, here's what I have to offer. Here's the expectations. Here's what I need from you. And so in that kind of like discovery phase, it's like giving the opportunity to discover, quote unquote, what we're offering and if they want in. And so that is like what gets the ball rolling. That really kind of sets a tone of like, here's what I need to know from you. Here's what's important. Here's how the process starts, which I think is a really good opportunity to point out why it's so important not to let clients circumvent that first step if that is part of your client experience. Because when they come in a different way, they're in your DMs, they're texting you, they're giving you a call because their sister passed along your number, and they're not having that first opportunity to get the communication in the way that you set it up in that discovery phase, it really can kind of throw things off right from the get-go.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting here thinking about a voicemail I got 2 days ago about someone wanting to plan a trip, and I just haven't even responded because I forgot about it. Don't leave me voicemails. Leave me voicemails or
Oh,
text messages. Like, I will 100%, like, forget if you don't follow my process. So,
yeah,
I digress.
yeah,
So you identified the what we're communicating, how to work with us, how to get started, and then how are we communicating that? And I think that can happen in a couple different ways. Like that can actually happen more broadly on our website,
yeah,
um, but then it can also happen in a little bit more detail in a form that they're filling out or a call that they're scheduling or an email that they respond, say, we want to plan a trip, and we reply back, here's how we work, here's the next step. So the what we're communicating and then translating to how that's communicated can happen in a variety of ways, I think, when clients are just getting started.
yeah. And it kind of they all can work in tandem and kind of build off of each other. And so when you're auditing this part of your communication, it's really making sure that like you're setting the table and the foundation so that people are moving forward that are the right fit and they really understand kind of like, hey, this is what we do. Here's what who we're a good fit for. These are our services. Step one, you don't really want to get on a discovery call with somebody who is looking for a completely different set of services than what you actually offer. So, auditing this so that it's really clear, oh, she does this for these types of people. I want that, and I'm that type of person.
That's what I'm looking for.
It's
I
a
think
really good first step because why do you want to have a discovery call with somebody who's looking for the exact opposite of that?
so. This actually makes me think of a couple use kind of situations that have come up in the advisor accelerator. First, I think when we don't have any boundaries established in terms of like minimum budgets or lead times or the destinations that we plan or don't plan, like these types of things, we're letting everybody in. And so then suddenly we put up these boundaries and we feel like we have filters now, we have hurdles, whatever we want to call them. And so anyone that surpasses those filters, they must be a good client. But then what happens sometimes is we get started on a trip design where it doesn't feel like a good fit, and we've had this conversation many times in the advisor accelerator where it's like they filled out my form, they scheduled a call, they paid my fee, they seemed so great on that first phone call, they did everything that I asked them to do, which meant that no red flags were raised. But
Mm,
now we're in it and this doesn't feel like a good fit. And now talking through this makes me realize one puzzle piece that's probably missing. It's not just about the boundaries and are you willing to follow my process? It's also how are we communicating who we are, what we do, why we do it, and who we're the best fit for? So that regardless of whether somebody's willing to fill out our form, schedule a call, and pay a fee, they're also able to self identify with, oh, this person is designing this type of trip at this level, and this is what this looks like. Is that what I'm looking for? And they
right.
can either opt in or opt out.
And that honestly is, I think, what the foundation that we set in episode 174 was all about, with the fact that it's really on us to paint that picture and not let the client decide what it is that we do and what it is that we're fulfilling and what
And
it is we're
what we're
offering.
going to do for them.
It's because it's not to be like super hard nosed about like here are all my boundaries, here are all the things, and then if you pass like all these tests, then yes, you we will move forward. It really is about like alignment and both of us finding joy in this process. It's kind of like we get the opportunity as small business owners to develop a business that really like lights us up and serve people that we really can help. But if we haven't done a great job of outlining who that is and what we do, then how are they to know that we don't operate and for, and this is just an example because you can have a business that does this and more power to you, but like I specialize in finding you the best deals. Like if that's what somebody is looking for, yet that is not what I have said I offered, it's not really their fault. I just didn't
Right.
communicate the fact that that's not what I offer. I could care less about if this is the lowest cost option for you. It's really not my brand. But
Yep.
if I didn't communicate that, then that's on me. It's not on them.
So in addition to how we work, what the process is, then I think that this discovery phase is also our opportunity to communicate our boundaries. And boundaries can look like a variety of things. Do you accept calls at any time of the day? What are your office hours? Or maybe you only accept calls by appointment. Do you have a minimum budget or any sort of minimum parameters that you have? Do you have a minimum lead time? Are there only certain destinations that you plan? Are there others that you don't plan? Boundaries can be everything, whether it's related to the destination or whether it's related to like your actual office hours. I think it's also important to talk about how quickly clients should expect to hear back from you. Like do you respond within one business day or 3 business days? Things like this. So this is also a part of the communication, that it's not just, hey, this is what we do and we're really good at it and fill out this form, but it's also like, here's what you should know about working with us, that should also be communicated in a variety of ways during this phase.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the discovery call can still serve its purpose of discovering. Like, people call it a lot of different things, but I think we call it a discovery call. And I think that that name for it is a good way of describing that you are discovering. It's a two-way street. Number one, it is really not for us to come in with like, I already have this super narrow focus. I'm just going to ask you these 5 questions and make sure I have my template filled out. And then there's nothing else to kind of like explore. A lot of times it could be people who have never worked with a travel advisor before or really are looking to discover what we have to offer. And we need to really take the time to discover who they are and what lights them up. And if that is in alignment with something we can bring value to. And so discovering on both sides can be happening in a discovery call. And the further along you are probably in your business, the more boundaries you might already have established. If you're newer and you kind of like really don't know, hey, I don't know, maybe I would love planning a trip to Russia. Like there are still those opportunities for you to learn and try things and figure out who your ideal client is if you're still on that journey. If you already know, then you can have more established boundaries that come up during that discovery call, but it is still a great opportunity for you to bring clarity to what it is you do and how it is you help people, but also really do a great job of listening and uncovering all the things that clients can share with us that are going to make sure that like we've really heard them, which is a great part of communication, is listening to people,
Hmm.
and they feel heard and understood because we've taken the time to kind of like, hey, this is a time for me to hear from you.
Hmm. I think one other thing that comes top of mind as to like what we communicate during this discovery phase is what to expect in terms of our entire client experience. So,
Yeah.
like timeline, how we work from one phase to the next, how we communicate, when to expect what. We don't start with dining recommendations, for example, and just like when does our service end? I think that whole kind of like communicating with the client, this is what working together is going to look like, high level, start to finish, is also really important to communicate in a variety of ways.
Yeah, yeah. So a great like audit for people who are like, "Hey, what am I doing and is it hitting ticking all the boxes?" Is just to really ask themselves like what expectations do they address up front versus what do they get questions about throughout the process at like, "Oh wow, like this would have been good for a client to know like before they signed on the dotted line or before we got started through with the proposal phase. Like this doesn't need to be a question later on. It could have been something I addressed up front. And we would
Yeah.
have all just felt a little better, like knowing where we were going and knowing how we were going to get there. And all of that stuff could just be kind of something that we've built in now to the process of our client experience through our communication in the discovery phase.
So I think that the answer to this will be the same throughout each of these phases, but maybe we should clarify this up front. I keep finding myself saying this should be communicated in a variety of ways. So when we're thinking about communication with clients throughout our client experience in a variety of ways, what are all the ways we can communicate something to clients?
Ooh, so we can communicate it through, what they discover on their own. So landing on our website and the copy that is there. It's communicated through like initial emails that if they inquire, what is it that we send back to them? What's on the form that they fill out? Can be communicated through an information guide or a welcome guide, which really just goes a little bit deeper into like the specifics of boundaries, expectations, what to expect in a way that is easy to follow and kind of maybe can be a little bit like of a presentation, so to speak. It's communicated through a discovery call, which you're able to audibly say, hey, let's just kind of
Mhm.
like make sure these things are clear, and then if there's a part that's not clear, great, now I really have an opportunity to clarify that even
Yeah.
more. And then the recap of like what was discussed on the discovery call and what are you going to expect next, that comes through an email after the discovery call. And all of that part of the discovery phase is multiple ways to kind of get to that same information, but make sure that it is delivered in a clear and concise way so that expectations, boundaries, how you work, all of that stuff is very, very evident and there's no surprises.
Yeah. So I think as you're auditing your communication throughout each phase, you can consider, what am I communicating? So, for example, I'm communicating that my office hours are every day from 10 to 4 p.m., just to make a simple example. Then the next question of that audit is, how am I communicating this? And are you and you get to decide as a business owner, are you communicating this one way in one place and that's it and you feel that that's sufficient, or are you communicating this in 65 different ways to Sunday to make sure that the message gets through? So, there's and every piece of information that you're communicating will be different. So lots of information can be mentioned once and that's all that's needed, and then other pieces of information might quite literally be shared 6 different times in 6 different ways. And that's part of the audit, is really combing through all the communication and finding what feels best for you and your business, but also for your ideal clients and how they want to be communicated with.
Right. And the easiest way to know, I think, is if people are still calling you at 6 p.m. Like if you said, hey, my office hours are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and yet you're cooking dinner and answering client calls, you got some work to do. That's a part of your business that needs to be audited. People don't understand or respect that boundary. They either don't know it or they don't respect it. Both of those can be
Yep.
addressed, maybe in different ways. But if there is something about your experience that is not, there's the follow through isn't there, or there is a break, I guess, in it, then that's the time to like really go through and take a closer look at what you're doing and what could possibly be changed.
Mhm. Is there any other information that you can think of that we should be communicating in the discovery phase?
Um, I
Yeah.
think that we've talked about boundaries, we talked about expectations, how we work, who we work for. I think that's the gist of it. I don't know. Is there anything else
So
that's coming
then
up for you?
that's all that I can think of.
Okay.
So then how do we begin to systematize this to create both a seamless and consistent client experience? How do we begin to systematize this part of the process?
I mean, the systematizing is that a word? Systematizing?
Yep, I think
Okay,
so.
good. The systematizing it might look a little bit different from advisor to advisor, but for me, the steps in my workflow of what's communicated and when is very kind of laid out. So as soon as somebody inquires, what do they get back? As soon as they set up an appointment, what do they get back? Before we get on a call, what information have they been able to review? During the discovery call, there's a system in place on my end for that. And like I said, I think I mentioned this. I try not to be so rigid that it can't be an actual conversation and it can't be something that where we're both discovering each other. At the same time, I can't. I find that if I loosey goosey it and just get on the phone and let's see what happens, I'm not correctly gathering the information that I really truly need to move forward in the best way possible. So for me, it works best for there still to be a system in place there as well. And then following that up, what I do next to kind of say, hey, here's the recap and here's how we're moving forward and here's what to expect next. Those are my kind of points of systematizing that discovery phase.
Yep. So I think you do the same. I systematize this part of the process with a lot of email templates, both in you want to plan a new trip, here's my form. Like that's an email template. Then it's, oh, you've completed the form. Okay, here's 3 or 4 different email templates I use to either accept or decline the inquiry for a variety of reasons. The links are already in the templates. And then including like my calendar link. So that's another like tool that I use to systematize everything and make it very seamless to avoid any kind of back and forth and scheduling calls. And then my follow-up email, as you said, like having a system in place for what we want to accomplish on a discovery call. I do. I have a Google Doc like template that I use for each client. And it's like questions where I'm keeping my notes that they've shared with me in the form. I'm keeping notes that they're sharing with me on the call. I'm keeping notes of like, okay, we're getting ready to have the call. These are like the immediate 3 or 4 questions I have top of mind of like, I need to talk to them about this. I need to ask this. What do they mean by this? That kind of
Right.
stuff.
Did they say they wanted to
Um,
visit 7 countries in 3 days? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's like something
yes.
that we need to dive deeper in here. Let me not forget to make sure to
Let's
bring up a map.
let's circle back to this point that you mentioned in your form. I even do some preliminary flight research and kind of screenshot that into the doc so that when we're on the call and they say, you know, I know where they're flying from because I ask about it in the forum. So I just say, like, have you looked at airfare? Would you like our support to do that? Yes, we want your support. Okay. Just looking high level, it does look like getting to XYZ in June in Greece this year is going to be $1,800 per person. And then I
And that
pause.
is true. Yes.
And we're talking about a
No, you're
family of
not sitting
6
in the front
here.
of the plane. You are sitting in the back.
I know. And then I pause for dramatic effect to let them
Sink in. Yeah.
react to that. I also do the same if they say we want business class in the form, then I quote business class and I just say like, okay, it looks like premium economy is pricing around this, business class is pricing around this. And then they'll say, okay, or they'll say, we're going to stick with premium economy. So I really do have a system and a process set up for that to get all that information before the discovery call so that if they say they want one thing, but that's actually not reality, that we talk through that during the discovery call. So that's even a part of this systematization is that I'm going into every trip design with 80 to 90% of the same buy-in and information with every single client.
Mm,
Like there's no surprises when they get that proposal, for example. There's
mhm.
no, oh, we said we want business class, but we had no idea it was 10K per person.
Right.
It's like, no, Whitney told us on the phone it was 10K per person and we said yes to that. So there's no surprises here.
Right. 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 Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there's
Um,
just some things to think about. I think when people are maybe have been doing it for, either just starting out or just have done something the same for a lot of times, but they're just finding, I always say like friction, right? Like there's just a point of
yeah.
friction in
Yeah.
part of your business. This is, and also to say that of course Whitney and I both have room for improvement and ways we learn and grow every year, but at least kind of hearing from other people, oh, that's a way to think of it. That's something I could do on the front end, because I do find friction with the fact that like everybody says they want business class. And then when you realize what the trip is going to cost and then what business class flights on top of that are going to cost, are we really making the best decision? Or now we have to rethink this. Where can I reduce that friction earlier in the process and
Yep.
have it just be set in my systems so that it's a clear and like less frictionless part of it?
On that note, I have removed a lot of friction by talking both about budget in the first discovery call as well as talking about flights and estimated flight prices because a lot of times we'll look at flights and I'll mention that cost and they'll say okay, and then I'll say okay, on the form you shared with me that you were comfortable with a $10,000 to $15,000 investment, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would say 6 times out of 10 somebody is on the call is going to say that includes airfare, right?
Right,
And
right.
I'm going
Yeah,
to
you
say,
always have to make
no,
that
it doesn't.
delineation. Yes.
So either you weren't the one that filled out the form where I specified that, or you were the one who filled out the form and
Just
you've already forgotten.
yeah.
And so that's like another moment of like right there in that call to that I remove that friction. And so
Yeah.
then if we need to reconsider everything that we just decided, that's fine, but we're going to do that now in the call. So like this might not on the face of things feel like a systematization of client experience, But in my mind, it is because it's literally like a checklist or a system of everything that I want to touch on during a discovery call and get buy-in from the client to make sure that we are on the same page before we move forward.
Right. Yeah. And the beauty of it is that why this matters in terms of thinking of your client experience is because think of the different emotions involved when somebody gets a proposal back and they had no idea that business class was $10,000 per person. And so now here they have a $30,000 proposal when they were expecting to spend $20,000 and they feel a certain way about it that impacts your overall client experience because it's not a good feeling. And they just feel a certain way. And then
Yeah.
so now you're working from a place of like deficit almost
Yep.
versus if you address this earlier on and you set the expectation and you get the buy-in, then when they do get the proposal with the agreed upon, hey, this is going to be this range and here's what it's going to include. And it looks like it's going to be premium economy because that's going to work best overall. They get that proposal in the same price range and they feel good about it because expectations were managed.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's move on to the next phase, the design phase of the trip design experience. What comes top of mind in terms of communication when you think of the design phase?
I think in the design phase, it's first and foremost letting them know, hey, here's when you can expect to see your proposal. I think a lot of times, and we're all different, so this is not a one size fits all answer. And it also is not a one size fits destination answer because we all know how long Japan's been taking this year. So there's a lot of different factors to consider if you build them yourself, if you're using DMCs, blah 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 blah. The list goes on and on if you're super busy and you need to kind of adjust that, but like letting people know and communicating when they're what comes next, here's when you're going to see this, and then if it doesn't hit that, adjusting that communication again is a really good starting point of auditing your communication in this design phase. And then the communication that comes after that, I think, is just how you're presenting proposals and the way you're communicating that part of what is essentially the one of the outside of like the experience they actually have, the communication and how you essentially quote unquote sell a trip is super super important. I think it can kind of make or break you. I think it can kind of like swing the needle in a lot of different ways without anything else ever changing, is how well you're able to sell a proposal on the front
Yeah.
end, which does have a lot to do with communication and also sales skills a little bit. So I guess maybe those go hand in hand, like just if you're a good salesperson.
Yeah.
um, and how you kind of talk through that. And then continuing on, just like the back and forth, and this obviously also depends on the type of trips you're selling and the type of travel you're doing. If it's cruise, fun and sun, Disney, FITs, all the things will have different type of like communication process of the like beginning proposal phase to confirmed trip phase is going to look and feel a bit different for all of us, just depending on our business model and style of trips that we're planning. But for those of us that do have those more complicated steps and itineraries with the FITs, the back and forth is really kind of like, how is that being managed, the time that it takes, the way that the communication is happening? Is it phone calls? Is it emails? Is it like, no, I need freaking answers to this, but you didn't even respond to this? Like all of those things I think are just things to think through and audit during that design phase.
Yes, everything you mentioned. And I think I would also add with the proposal timeline, I feel it's also important to communicate what to expect to see in the proposal. So I think we all propose trips in a completely different way. But for example, I will always include options and never include pricing. And so I tell them that up front. Like when you see the proposal, you'll see options for more tours and experiences than you can include. And I want you to tell me which ones excite you most. Where
Oh, that's so interesting.
possible.
I never even knew that.
Really?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So for example, I'll do like, let's say you have 3 days in Lisbon, and I'll do like the first day, like an introductory walking tour. Maybe there's like a sidecar or a tuk tuk tour that's really cool to kind of give you an orientation of the city. And then the second day, it's like you can go out to Sintra, but like you can do Sintra 6 ways. So like here's the 2 ways that I feel, the ways that you can visit Sintra and that area of outside Lisbon that I feel are most aligned with what you're looking for. Like, which one of these interests you most? And then on that third day, I'll do like, okay, like we have a food tour, we have like a photo experience, we have a graffiti art, street art kind of tour. Like that's kind of like the what's the like the wild card day where
Mhm.
like you've gotten the basic walking tour, you've gotten the classic day trip out of the city. Now here's the wild card day. And it's like I usually tell them I would choose one of these.
Okay.
Like here's three options of like fun things you could do, like a cooking class or whatever, whatever. But I would choose one because I don't want them to overschedule, but I also present it as a way of like, I want you to know what's possible. I think all of these are really great options for what we discussed. But I want you to be a part of the process and tell me which one excites you most.
Okay, so
So,
they have these options. They have like tour options, maybe like a few different hotels they can choose from. And in your mind, you're like, whatever kind of combination they come back with is still going to be
yeah,
within their price range. So I
exactly.
feel okay with that.
Yes,
Okay.
that's how I present it both in the discovery call and then when I'm delivering the proposal, I say that. Like, there's no pricing involved here. I haven't included pricing because I don't yet know what you're going to choose. If there's any upgraded experience or hotel, I like mark that very clearly. And so I'm just kind of estimating. Like I have a spreadsheet. And I'm like, well, if they choose all the lowest hotels and these experiences, which is like I can always kind of guess what they're going to choose, right? Then I'm
Mm,
like, we're right on target with budget. If they include like one upgraded hotel, one upgraded experience, and everything else standard, we're at the top end of their budget. But if they include upgraded everything, we're over budget. And that's what I prepare them for
mm,
because I've marked it as upgrades. So that's how
okay.
I present it.
Yeah.
But the whole point of me sharing this is in addition to sharing proposal timeline expectations, which you mentioned, I also feel it's important to like give clients an idea of like what's the proposal going to look like, what's it going to include, what should they expect, so that then when they receive that, however you present your proposals, they're like, oh, this is exactly what Whitney said.
Exactly.
Now we have to make a few decisions. And so
Yeah.
but if I didn't explain that, they'd be like, well, how much is all of this, how
Right.
are we supposed to choose? So that managing expectations and that communication up front is really important or else my process would never work.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's actually a really great illustration of the fact that you can do it a variety of ways. It's truly how you communicate it and making sure that the understanding is there. Like, here's what happens, here's why, here's what comes next, here's what's required of you. Make some choices.
So that's the additional communication point is then when I deliver that proposal, I don't just say like, let me know what you think. I'm like,
Yes.
here are 6 bullet pointed questions I need answers to. Which hotel do you prefer in Lisbon? Which experience in Sintra excites you most? On the third day in Lisbon, would you like a cooking class or would you like a street art walking tour? Whatever it is. Like I ask very specific questions so that they know what I need from them next.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
think that this is a really important part of communication too, is like on the front end, managing expectations of like, here's what I'm going to do so that you know what to expect. And then when you do deliver that, here's what I need from you and here are the next steps. So you're always like one step ahead of their actual experience in your communication.
Yes. Yes. That's great. And I think another thing to kind of think through for people in this phase of the client experience when you're just trying to audit what's working, what's not, is a lot of times we've mentioned this like plenty of times, but like if you are getting questions consistently, this is always a not a red flag, but just an opportunity to say, "Hey, what can I communicate in a different way so that clients feel more comfortable in this process when they are not repeat clients, if they are referral, if they've never worked with a travel advisor before, this is a whole new way of planning trips. And so the over communication of what we think is normal and natural, of course, I don't have your proposal in 12 hours after we talked. Like, well, why not? You just go online and see how much the hotels cost and then, like in their minds it's a different
Sure.
process than what it actually is. But like understanding, okay, if your clients are messaging you consistently with the same questions, what can you do? When are those questions coming? How can you get in front of that? When can you add updates in terms of just kind of letting them know? I have one thing that I've recently started to do is, and I don't know why it even took me this long, this is like such a simple thing, people probably do this all the time, but like once everything is booked, hey, everything is booked. Here's what's coming next. And you know what I mean? Like there's always kind of like, oh, when do we start making restaurant reservations? It has been told to them already. It's in this part of the
Yep.
communication, whatever. But it was like, hey, I need to add this in this email. Like after they're already excited,
Yes.
yay, our trip is booked. I don't need an email asking me, is everything confirmed? I mean, it was to me, of course, like you accepted the quote,
You
like
authorize the
we did.
payment.
We just sat there and twiddled our thumbs. Of course, we booked the things, but no, sometimes people want that like extra confirmation. Just
Yep.
checking, did everything get booked? Yes, it
Yep.
did. So it's on me to
Yes.
say everything has been booked. Next up is this. This is when you can expect that email
Yes.
to go to that thing. So just thinking through, hey, where can I add maybe regular updates that's just going to provide that peace of mind for clients? Here's
Yep.
where my trip is at. Here's what we've done so far. Here's what's on our radar next. Here's what we need from you. Those questions just kind of like I said, keep people at a nice, peaceful feeling and let them know that you are on top of their trip and like it's a priority to you.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. In terms of systematization for this component, I feel like it's fairly similar as the first. Most of my systematization is in email templates,
Mhm.
and just following this process like clockwork. Like we do this and we do this. I send you the proposal, you choose the options, then I prepare the invoice, I send it back, you authorize, I make the bookings, I send the booking email. Like it's just like it's like a very
The insurance
set
quote,
process cuz
the this. Yeah.
yep. And
And
that's
you have to systematize this part because nothing can fall through the cracks in this part. Also,
yes.
I think
Yeah.
it's far too critical to kind of like keep this in your brain and just feel like you're going to remember where all the steps are when you're actually like literally supposed to be like the trip. Like this is it. This is
Yep.
not
Yeah.
something you can play around with.
And I think additional systematization comes with like an itinerary builder that I hope everyone is using. However, you present your itineraries, find a way to include templates and include systems within that system, within that tool, so that if you have four hotels in one itinerary, all of those hotels should be presented in a similar format.
Yeah.
If somebody had a trip last year and now they have a trip this year, those two itineraries in that itinerary builder should look fairly similar.
Just
Please,
saying.
please.
Just saying.
Okay, the next phase is delivery, which I think by delivery you mean like their actual trip. Or
During
like,
travel, yes. Like
yeah.
we are delivering our service, meaning they are going on the trip that we've planned for them and we've created. This is a service that we provide. And so, obviously, in different industries, like the service delivery might look a little different. But I think for us, it's like truly the trip that they are taking. And so, it's interesting because a lot of times, like from an outside perspective, it seems like the actual trip is like the bulk of it when we all know that most of our work is before the service delivery. Like,
Oh,
which is
there.
why cancellations are so annoying. Like, oh, but I didn't go on the trip. Percent of my work
Our
already. Well,
work
I
is done.
all I do now is check in to see if your trip's going okay. What do you assume?
I
Like,
mean,
no, my work has far, you know what I mean? So this is like,
I'm frustrated.
oh
I'm
yeah,
frustrated when I'm in my office and I'm just like, get on the plane.
yeah.
Because as soon as people get on the plane or get
It's
on the
crazy.
ship or get on whatever their mode of transportation they're going on, things generally are
Generally,
much
yes.
quieter and smoother and calmer for us. Like once you're on the trip,
The easy part.
that's the easy part for us.
Yeah.
You just got to get on the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say for service delivery, let's maybe just as like a marker of starting, maybe it's kind of just like like how you send people off, right? So
Yeah.
for the both of us, we use departure videos. So Loom to kind of like walk through a final itinerary to make sure clients feel very comfortable with all the details, all of those last minute important information that has been added into their itinerary, meeting points, who to call when, what to expect for this, what to do if you want to change your dining reservations, all of that you walk through the itinerary with the client so they feel really confident. And some people do decide to have phone calls for this. And this also goes back to like if
Yep.
your ideal client really like is not going to feel
Yes.
comfortable with a Loom call and they're 70 years old and they want you to walk them through their itinerary. Well, if that's your
Or
ideal
in
client,
person.
or
or
in
in
person.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've
That's
got
a
to cater
very
to your ideal clients. If
yeah.
Loom videos, if your clients for whatever reason are not watching your Loom videos, then you haven't picked the right
Because
form
it's
of
it's
communication.
it's a huge missed opportunity to send somebody off on a trip that has been so prepared and like thought through, and there's a lot of things that they should know, and to not really confirm that they get it and that they feel prepared and they feel
Right.
comfortable is leaving too much up to chance. Like,
Yes.
hope
And
everything just goes well, but
assuming
you
that
won't
they've read
know
things
if it
and
doesn't.
yeah. And so I think that this is probably, I would argue that this departure point, however you do it, in person, phone call, Loom video, however you do this sending off communication, I would argue that it's the most important, top three most important pieces of communication throughout the entire thing, because this is how you establish yourself as a professional. You make sure that they have everything that they need. And if they have what they need, but they don't know where it is, they don't know how to find it, and they don't know that it's even in the itinerary that they haven't read through, then they essentially don't have it. And that's going to reflect back on you. And that's going to impact their travel experience, because while they're in destination and their transfer is 2 minutes late and they don't know what to do, it's going to come back to you. Right.
Or
So
you're
like
getting that phone
this,
call at 3 a.m., which is also
exactly.
what you don't want. It's funny you say that, like, the top 3 most important thing, because I feel like there's a lot of people that still don't do anything. And it's not that they
That
haven't done great work. They've done all the great work to create a great experience, but their point of departure of, like, what they do to, like, actually send clients off is maybe something they haven't considered. I feel like I've been hearing that a lot lately.
have you?
Yeah.
Can I have names and phone numbers of these people? I'm just kidding.
Like,
Who
"Oh,
are
you
they?
you do a Loom video, or you do a call, or" and okay, let's be fair. What did I do before Loom videos? I guess I just assumed that I put all
Uh,
the information into an itinerary and I said, "Here's your
oh
final."
my God. That's such a good, what did I do before Loom
And I
videos?
thought that, like,
That's such a
everybody
good
would, like,
question.
read through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that it all made sense. But I will tell you, I got
Yeah.
far more phone calls in the middle of the night early in my
Oh,
career
yeah.
than I ever do
Yes.
now. Question, and
So,
I was changing restaurant reservations the day of. I was
oh, yeah, yeah.
calling the transfer to say, "Hey, the client can't find you, but they're here over at gate B." Like, there was so much other
You guys are standing next to
interruptions.
each other. Just
Yeah,
look to your right.
you're wearing a red shirt. Let's kind of merge you. Like,
Uh, oh, that's such a good question. I don't remember when exactly I signed up for Loom. But at the very, very, very beginning of my business, I printed my itineraries and I sent them in the mail. So
I've
I
always done
definitely
that. So yeah, there was that. There was still that component.
so I definitely but I that was before I used Travefy, like before I even knew Travefy existed. So that was like, I guess I really did just print it and send it
Yeah.
and hope for the best.
And there
I
are
guess
some
that is
type
what
A
I did.
people that's going to be enough, because they're going to kind of like make sure that they understand everything. Hey, here's a question if I don't get it. But there's also those people that, like, no, I'm just in their minds, like, I guess this is all here. Like, I guess
Right.
everything is ready.
There are people like that for
Yeah.
sure. And then I guess when I got to using Travefy, I guess I really did just send it. I would have to go back and, like, really dig to, like, figure out what I did, because I truly can't remember, but you're right. When I did that, before I did the videos, that's when I was getting the middle of the night calls. That's when I was getting, like, just in destination questions of, like,
Mhm.
"What are we supposed to tip our driver? We're just arriving to our hotel. I
Yeah.
need an answer, like, 2 minutes ago." You know what I mean? Like, that always stressed me out so much. "We wanna cancel our restaurant reservation. We wanna change this in our itinerary. Where can I find this? Where can I find that?" And it was a combination of information that was there that they didn't notice, or information that I just simply
Didn't know to
didn't
include.
provide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And information that I didn't provide, a good example would be, like, drawing the boundary and telling them, "If you want to cancel your dining reservation, please do this directly or ask the front desk or concierge to help."
Right.
I just assumed people would
Would
not
do
call
that.
me at 3
Yeah.
AM to
But
cancel a
they
dinner
will.
reservation,
They
and I
absolutely
was
will.
wrong.
Yeah.
So, the Loom videos save me
So much time,
from all of that,
so much stress.
all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, however
S
you deliver that additional about of peace of mind, but also critical information, is a really crucial part of like the success that they have on their trip, the seamlessness of it, and also your own sanity.
And I think that we're talking about like whether it's a Loom video, a phone call, in person, like that's the communication, but it's also the system for us, I think. Like
Yeah.
that's how we are optimizing our time and creating a more seamless experience for clients, but also creating efficiency for ourselves. Like it's the communication and the system kind of all in one, I would say.
Mhm. 100%. So, crucial part of auditing your trip experience in the delivery phase. I would say like I do a check-in email a day after arrival
Yep.
to give them an
Do
opportunity
you
to
do bon
say,
voyage as well?
"No, I don't do a bon voyage. I just do a day
Oh,
after
I do
they've."
both.
Okay. Like
I
so
do
what
bon voyage and then checking in like once they've been there for about 36 to 48 hours.
okay. What does your bon voyage say?
Basically, literally, I send it about an hour before I know they'll be boarding. So I'm like assuming they're like sitting in the airport at their gate getting the email. I think it's like 3 sentences. It's like, "Today's the day. I'm so excited for you to explore Thailand together with your family over the next 2 weeks. If you have any questions or concerns, contact details for the DMC, I say their name, are in your itinerary under information and documents, and I'll be here as well. I look forward to seeing photos. Have a great
Okay.
trip."
That's a great. Yeah.
It's
That's a
have a
pretty
good
consistent.
trip. Don't
Yeah.
forget, we're here to
Yeah.
support you, basically, is the message.
Gotcha. So yeah, a bon voyage, if that makes sense for you, a checking in, if that makes sense for you. And then I think the third thing I would put in auditing your communication during the delivery of service is honestly, how would I say this? Like how you deal with when things go wrong, like your
Yeah.
communication and things don't go according to plan, when you have to put out fires, when something is not what was expected. I think this goes back to what we were saying on like the bad experience somebody's going to feel really comes down with how you communicate through it. And so,
Yes.
and also, like, listen, we're all going to have that 0.1% of clients as like, you were put on this earth to have a bad mood and experience. There's
Yep.
nothing that can
There's
save
always
you.
those.
And, far be it from me to kind of like go into a pit of depression because of
Don't
who
let
you
me
are.
get in the way of karma.
So there's going to like, let's just remove that 0.1%. And then there's going to be how we deal and approach with through our communication and through our kind of like sense of, I don't know what I would say, maybe like ownership, calmness, like I'm here with you type of
Yes.
like approach to where people feel like I'm not navigating this alone. She's doing her best. And also like I don't feel ghosted, that type of
Yes.
thing.
Yes. And taking the situation seriously, like, is this a life threatening kind of situation? Is this an inconvenience and a bump in the road kind of situation? Like whatever it is, like either, and I think it goes back to our ideal client profiles, like we need to have that person in mind and know how that person is going to handle stress and what they're going to need to really get them through something. But the promptness with which we reply, the empathy with which we reply, and how we work either on behalf of them or alongside them, depending upon the situation, to resolve the
Mhm.
situation.
Is
That's what
is
sets up long
crucial.
term loyal clients.
Long term.
It's
I
everything.
I have a quick story. A couple of weeks ago, I had clients flying to Africa. They were doing gorilla trekking, safari. It was like bucket list, like beautiful trip, right? It'd been planned a year and a half in advance, whatever, whatever. They got stuck in Dubai. There was like all of that weather stuff that like literally like derailed because like if you're flying through Dubai, you got one airport choice. Like you're not like, oh, let me switch to this other airline going through these other cities. Like, nope, you're going through Dubai. You're either going to your destination or you're going back home. And so my client's flight delay, like 10 hours worth of like just pushing it back before it's originally officially canceled. Nothing is going out either way. And they get to the point where they were just like 36 hours, what have you, like ready. They really wanted to go home. And I was just like,
Oh,
oh
no.
dear God. But like there was no like like what how is this going to be resolved? And they were just like getting more and more anxious, more and more nervous. It literally was my birthday. So I had went into a massage.
Oh,
I come out of my massage like with like text messages of like the flight is now canceled after like 13 hours of delays. Now it's canceled, like whatever. And like thankfully, what it took was Kelsey getting on the phone with them, like talking them off a ledge, connecting them with like the concierge at Global First, our DMC saying, hey, here's how we're going to like rearrange it so you don't miss gorilla trekking. Like it was a concerted effort by like the DMC, the flight concierge, and our team to really like talk them through all of their anxiety and nervousness and being pissed off at like a huge inconvenience in their travel experience. But like the email that we got at the end of their trip of like how amazing this experience was and thank you so much for being there for us and like helping us get through it was like, this is why we become like that invaluable, like intangible piece that like, yeah, if you were on your own and navigating all this alone and didn't know how to like change your flight and didn't know what you were going to do now that you arrived in Kenya and your luggage never did, like all of the things that we had to like make work out of a not great situation is how we earn our stripes. Like
Yes.
this is where
Yes.
it's like, oh, how worth it are you? Like, let me show you. And we did. And now, like, what would have been super awful if they would have not had to have this experience is now like one of the best experiences of their life and a memory that they get
Right.
to take with them forever. And so it's like, how do we make not great situations that are usually out of our control, but how do we do our best to at least show our support and do whatever we can to so they feel supported and that somebody is working alongside them.
And that we're exceeding their expectations even in how we handle the challenge
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They were like so
for sure.
grateful.
Yes.
And so
They'll
was
never
I.
travel again without you.
Never, never.
Okay, delight. This is the
Delight.
last one, the last phase.
Yeah.
So, what comes to mind immediately when you think about communication in the delight phase of the trip?
And maybe even the story I shared also has to go with delight because I feel like delight is those above and beyond things and also kind of just like what we're doing outside of like the delivery of the trip that we've all kind of agreed
Sure.
to, signed the contract for, what have you. This is kind of like our long-term approach for client acquisition or retention, I mean, and like how do we literally like have these lifelong loyalists as clients? We have to figure out ways to delight them, and how we do that through our communication and through our the ways that we engage and interact with our clients is the kind of like basis and foundation for like a really strong and healthy business. So, it's like when they get back from their trip, like, do you actually care how it went? Do you actually want to make sure that all of those special touches were acknowledged or like give them a chance to kind of show their what stood out to them and got them excited, all of that kind of stuff? Are you checking in with them when it's their anniversary? Are you saying, oh, wow, it's been, 6 months since you did this wonderful trip. I wonder what's on your radar. Or I came across this great experience and I thought of you. So I just was reaching out to let you know. Like there are so many different ways that we can just add these little touch points of communication that I think will be like, this is a relationship. This is not just, you're not a number. You're not just like, okay, this trip is done. It's out of my mind. I made my commission. I'm on to the next one. Like
Right,
it
right.
really is the relationship building of what we do that I think, how do we find more ways to do that and like make them feel seen, make them feel special, that type of thing.
Yes. So this delight phase, I think you make a really good point that it can happen during those challenging situations. Delight, it often also happens when clients are traveling and they're checking into their hotel room and we're surprising them with little things. And then it can also happen in between trips, when we're happy birthday, happy anniversary. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. And this is, I think, one of the most important ones to systematize because I think it's quite often the one that all travel advisors want to do these things. They have really good intentions of doing these delight types of things, but it often gets pushed to the side just because we get busy, lack of time, lack of inspiration, lack of a system to make it quick and easy and efficient. And so while there's so much opportunity to communicate in this delight phase of things, I think it is the most important one to like decide what you're going to do. If you're going to send a card, figure out what company you're going to use to send that card. If you're going to email the hotel and do something special for their anniversary, make sure you have an email template, to get that to the hotel on time. Like whatever it is you want to do to delight, build a system around it so that you can do it to the best of your ability every time and make that a consistent delight,
Mhm.
as opposed to a delight that some clients get and some clients don't.
Yeah, yeah. I have my systems in place are around birthdays. We send birthday cards. they are the 6 months after you've traveled, like, wow, I can't believe it's been 6 months since you went to Thailand. That was such an amazing trip. I hope you guys have great memories from that. Like, is there anything else on your radar? That just check in point, a delight at the holidays, because I send, a holiday gift or something like that. But then also, like, there's, I think the mindset to have around this is, we've talked about this before and I don't remember the specific numbers, but it goes back to this idea of the time you spend retaining clients versus acquiring new ones. It's like a no brainer. What can you do to delight the people who have already worked with you and keep them engaged and keep them excited and keep them like wanting to come back versus trying to go get new clients? Like, your money and your time is better spent on the retention of good clients.
Yeah,
So putting your energy there, taking time away from like, what should I post on social media? Well, what can you email your top 5 clients? Like, that's a better use of your time.
agreed. This has been fabulous. I feel like I've even thought of a few things throughout our conversation today that I can kind of dig a little bit deeper into for my own business to tweak and refine. And I'm also really excited to take this one step further in our upcoming masterclass. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
everything, from your perspective and from your business and what you think about throughout the most important areas, communication and systematization. And just to remind everybody, we are leading a crafting your signature client experience masterclass, and everything that we've talked about in the last 2 episodes today. And then next week, we have a special Ask Me Anything About Client Experience episode that you can look forward to. We will be taking all of this one step further in our masterclass. So we look forward to everyone joining us. Again, if you want to learn more and to register, you can go to mastersandtravelpod.com/client experience. And the masterclass will be taking place on June 18th or 19th. So you can sign up for whichever one works best for your schedule. We look forward to seeing you all there.